All right, heading home from the office. It's a little earlier because I have a 5 o'clock meeting and I did not want to be at the office for potentially like leaving between, I don't know, like by 6 kind of thing. I didn't want to be in that kind of situation, so that's a nice thing about having flexible working hours is like I'm still going to be working the same amount of time. I'm just going home in between. That way I'm not wasting more time on the road, as much as I love talking to all y'all. But that's what's up. Today was good. I did have a topic from this morning's vlog that I said I was going to bring up. I don't think anything else crazy came up at work that like inspired me for some other topic, but I just want to say, like, overall was productive day for me, which is nice. I had a bunch of stuff that I had to do some write-ups on. One of the things I find kind of, I'm going to use the word interesting. It's kind of like, it's new for me. It's not like a natural thing that I focus on. It's sort of like more outward communication with engineering activities. So what I mean by that is, I've always been of the mindset that, like, we're working on important stuff. I do kind of what's being told to me and get the teams behind it. You know, we'll have conversations about what's going on, and then we get the work done, deliver. Everyone's happy, but sometimes that's just like not enough. And what I mean by that is, like, it's like a visibility thing. I think it's a side effect of just so much going on and being at a huge company that we could go deliver a bunch of awesome stuff and then, like, you're just not getting visibility for it. So we're trying to over communicate on stuff. One, for like our partner teams and stuff like that. So, and even like internal learning, just sharing. So let me back up. Doing write-ups and stuff like that can be beneficial for internal learning within your team, like knowledge transfer, stuff like that. Then for our partner service owners, depending on what the write-up's about, in my case, it's very applicable. And then third is, like, I guess, like twofold. Visibility for people that are people that I manage, so I can showcase, like, here's all the awesome stuff they were doing on a particular project. And then the other part to that is like my own visibility, right? So I can say, hey, look, here's a project I was leading and I helped drive it to completion. Here's the impact. So a bunch of different reasons, but I'm not used to doing that because historically it's just been like, do the good work and, like, it gets noticed. So it's just not natural for me. But anyway, that was today. Felt pretty productive. Did a bunch of writing. It's like writing a newsletter article, except for work. So that was cool. I still got, I think all my writing's done for that kind of stuff. And then I mentioned in this morning's video, it's like Connect season where we write documentation about, it's almost like your accomplishments and stuff since earlier in the year when we did this. And you talk with your manager about it, and it's kind of like a written record of things you've done. So I have to do that for my team, but I have to do it for myself too. So I have to get mine written. So anyway, that's some more writing I got to do, and then I got to do responses to my employees Connect. So there's a lot more writing, but I don't have any more like technical write-ups or anything like that. So that's what that is. Okay, so the topic that I was thinking about this morning that I thought would be good to go over. I have to yawn. And that's the topic. The end. No, I wanted to talk about, it's kind of stemming from this interview I did with Jade Wilson, and the topic was about behavioral interviews. And so Jade is a Microsoft employee, and she's a content creator over in the UK. She's awesome, and she was visiting for about a week for Microsoft's global hackathon, so some people got to come over from the UK and participate, which is super cool. Anyway, she was like, hey, like I'm going to be in the area, so we figured we'd meet up, do a bit of recording. And because I had my course with Ryan that just launched for behavioral interviews, she was like, hey, we can talk about that. That would be like an interesting thing to go over. I got to switch lanes here. I'm behind a bus. And the lane's going to end. This guy in this like Chevy Volt is like trying to get around me. Sorry, Chevy Volt, not today. Anyway, the interview was super cool. We talked about behavioral interviews. She gave me a couple scenarios to go through. I really enjoyed it. I watched it back, and I enjoyed watching it back, which is kind of a rare thing for me. I'm still kind of like, I get awkward watching my videos and stuff like that. Like, I don't know if that's something that just happens for most people, but anyway. It was on behavioral interviews. We got to do a shout out for the course and stuff that Ryan and I have. And then, so she posted the video today, and, you know, a lot of people excited to see it, which is great to see. You know, it's nice getting positive responses. Ryan reshared it, which is awesome because we worked on the course together. So it's cool that, you know, we got to individually create some content and kind of share it out, and then like it's kind of, you know, promoting the course that we both worked on. So super cool. And one of the things that Ryan called out was that, and it's actually like from the video itself, the interview, I had said that as interviewers, in my opinion, it's not our job to just like basically try to make you fail. Like, it's not ideal to just like gatekeep. I feel like that's an ineffective way to go through an interview. That's my personal perspective. I think that it's important to try and, like, you want, again, all my opinion. If you disagree with it, you're wrong. Just kidding. But if you disagree, that's totally cool. Like, you're allowed to have your opinion. Me, as an interviewer, I want to work to try and extract and understand as much value from the candidate as possible. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'm going to get into some nuanced details about that. And so I think that was something that really resonated with Ryan. I don't think that, like, Ryan and I did not rehearse a response of his to the post. So when he made his post sharing Jade's video post, he had called that part out, saying like, hey, like that's a really important detail. I can't remember the exact wording. Ryan, if you're watching this, I apologize. I didn't memorize it. But I think the takeaway for him was that that's an important part, which is we're not trying to gatekeep. And I'm gonna jump to one of the comments that came up that kind of inspired this, and then I'm gonna kind of work backwards and talk about some of the details. I apologize if it's confusing, but I want to present this to you in a way where you'll go, oh, I understand why someone's saying that. Okay, so that's my goal. So Ryan was sharing this and kind of sharing his meta point about what he thought was valuable. And one of the comments he got was that, and this is from a content creator, I said this in the earlier vlog, that like we both respect this guy like a lot. He's a great content creator. I'm not going to mention the name because I don't think that matters. And I don't want to draw attention to it because I don't want it to be perceived in a negative way at all, because I don't want this to sound negative. The comment was essentially along the lines of like, well, I do think it's valuable to look for red flags, and in particular, like, it's actually an important thing that I do in the interviews. And so I'm reading this, and then Ryan's kind of going back and forth with him on it and saying like, they're sharing examples. And one thing that like I really like seeing is when like people disagree on something, that you're not immediately shutting down the other person. Like, there's so many arguments and stuff online that could be like interesting perspective sharing opportunities, and people are just like, screw you, man, like, you're wrong if you don't agree with me. And that's not what was happening here. It was really cool to see, like, one individual sharing their perspective and then the other kind of being like, well, no, this is mine. Here's why I don't think that your example is a good example, or I don't think it's applicable here. But not attacking the other person, not being like entirely dismissive. Like, you can disagree without being like, you don't even make sense or you're dumb. Like, you can literally have adult conversations and disagree and still like walk away and be like, cool, like, thank you for sharing, like, I appreciate that. And I don't know why we don't do that more. Maybe it's just easier to be on the internet and shake your fist at people. But anyway, I'm kind of reading this and I'm like, well, like, I appreciate what Ryan was saying, because it's kind of like he was sharing what I feel like I was sharing in the video. So I was like, like, that's weird. But the guy's responding and I'm going like, yeah, but I also agree with him, because he's saying that he doesn't ignore red flags. Like, red flags are a really good signal. And then I'm thinking like how are they arguing in the first place, or like debating this in the first place? Like, why can't they both be right about this? That was what was going through my head. So I was like, okay, I must be missing something. So I went back up and I read Ryan's post and like was trying to, at this point, I had understood the meta point of what Ryan was saying, because I agree with it. And I'm trying to look for details that make me think like, or make me understand, was there just some part of this that I missed that the other person picked up on with a different perspective, and that's why they're having this debate? Like, it's got to be something like that. And sure enough, I think the way that something that could have been misinterpreted, or maybe it was the fault of Ryan. I don't know. Like, maybe this could have been more clear or said in a different way, or maybe Ryan did mean it this way. I don't know, right? But I think one part of it that may have led to confusion or a difference of opinions was, I think Ryan had said something along the lines of like, we're looking for value in the candidates, not looking for red flags, right? And I made a course with Ryan on this, so I don't think that Ryan is intending to say we ignore red flags, right? I don't think that's what's being intended here. I think what's being intended is to say, like, we're not trying to put you on the spot to trip you up and then go, oh, there's a red flag. Like, we're not trying to trick you and classify that as a red flag. I think that's Ryan's point. And I 100% agree with that. And if that's not what Ryan meant, then I might be misinterpreting stuff even more. But the point is, when I read that, I'm going, okay, like, I could totally rationalize why this other guy is disagreeing now. He's saying like, no, there is value in red flags. And I agree. Like, if a red flag comes up, you don't want to be like, oh, I'll just ignore that one. Like, this person is apparently going to physically attack people, but that's okay. Like, we don't pay attention to red flags. Like, you're going to listen to them. But again, the point was that when we're interviewing people as interviewers, the goal of the interview, in my opinion, is not to say, let me find all the ways to make this person fail. It's just not. Now, maybe one could argue, if you spend no time on trying to surface red flags, like actively, are you just going to miss them? Perhaps. That could be an argument, right? And I don't know. Maybe, yeah, sure. But I think that historically, when I've approached interviews this way and kind of like given people the benefit of the doubt, what I'm trying to accomplish is making people feel comfortable in the interview. I'm trying to make sure that, like, if someone's stuttering or they're trying to explain something and they're giving too much detail or not enough detail, I don't go, oh, that's a red flag because this person is unable to answer my question or they can't navigate it properly. Like, those aren't red flags to me. Those could be warning signs that I'm like, hey, this person maybe is uncomfortable or they're not great at interviewing, or perhaps they're avoiding. Like, this could turn into a real warning sign. So it's a signal. So I don't necessarily ignore it, but I'm not gonna like hold it against them if they're, I don't know, they went into too much detail. If they keep going into too much detail on everything, and I go the whole interview trying to get them back on track and it just doesn't work, then like I failed to extract value from the person I'm interviewing. And like, you know, like when I want to say that that's on me, but at the same time, obviously, like there's only so much I can do. And as long as I'm doing my best to keep them coming back on track, then like, you know, I failed at extracting the value and I want to take responsibility, but I can't blame myself if someone doesn't actually deliver on answering questions. Like, that's the difference. So anyway, the framing here that I'm trying to make clear is that if someone said something in an interview when they were answering things for me and I was like, holy crap, like that, whoa, like that's that's a red flag, I would not ignore it. But the goal of how I ask questions is not to put you on the spot to like force something weird out of you like that. I think that's how I would explain it. So, and in other contexts, like with coding questions, it's the exact same thing. It's the reason I don't like lead code, because I feel like a lot of the questions are aimed at having a trick to them, some weird nuance that you just need to know in order to like solve it correctly. And I think that if you were the kind of person that wanted to ask a lead code question, I think it can be totally fine if you go into it being like, look, my goal is not to trick you with it, but like, I just want to see your train of thought and how you think through problems. Great. I think that could be awesome, right? Like, hey, here's a weird problem. Like, tell me the naive solution you think of, and then like, could we hypothesize any other opportunities to kind of figure this out and do it more optimally? Like, where do you see this being bottlenecked? Where do you see this being inefficient? And just like having a cool conversation about it. To me, that's like getting an understanding value out of the individual. But if someone's just like, look, I literally am stuck trying to find the optimization, and then at the end of it, you're like, well, they coded the naive solution, they couldn't find the trick, so they fail. I'm like, man, that's like, you're setting people up to fail if you're approaching it that way. So I think that's bullcrap in terms of like an interviewing style, which is why personally I steer away completely from asking lead code style questions. My questions are very simple, and when I say simple, I'm not using the word easy because first of all, I don't think it's easy for, you know, across the board for different people. For some people it might be very easy, but they're simple at least because there's no tricks. Then what I do is I scale the question. So for example, if I'm asking a senior software engineer, one of my interview questions that I really like to use, if they fly through it, great. I have variations that I can start adding in. I can say, well, what if we did this instead? What if there was this constraint? Like, tell me what's going to happen to how we design the code. It's not a trick. I'm not saying, haha, you didn't predict this. I'm saying, great, you did it exactly as we discussed. Now what happens? Like, just talk to me and show me what's going to change. And I find that can be very effective at, again, understanding how people think through things and solve problems. And then if someone struggles, right? So if I ask a senior software engineer like the same question and they're struggling to even get through the basis of it, then I go, okay, like I went into this not trying to trick them. If I give them a little bit of guidance and it's not unsticking them, then I go, okay, like, you know, like they might not be capable of coding at the level that we're hoping for. Now, I should also add this. I have absolutely interviewed people in the last 12 years where they have told me that they code basically they've had a programming job for like 7 years. So as part of that, they're programming every day. I'm not sure if people are familiar with FizzBuzz or FizzPop. If you're not, you can like check FizzPop or FizzBuzz on Wikipedia. I can't remember the exact stats on this. I like admitting when I don't know stats because I'm not trying to, to pull the wool over your eyes, but there's this interview question called Fizz Buzz or Fizz Pop, depending on who you are, and it goes over some very basic programming concepts. And the premise of the question is something like this. Like, you have a loop, so for the numbers like 1 through 10 or whatever range, right? So you need some loop. So for these numbers, if the number, and you can change the condition, but usually it's something like, if the number is divisible by, if it's even, print fizz, if it's odd, print buzz or pop. And again, you can change the conditions, but the point is that you have a loop, you have an if statement, and if you're doing the even odd thing, then you have like a modulo operator. But you could do that different ways, right? You can ask different conditions. So like you could say for like, these 10 colors or something, for every word that has more consonants than vowels, whatever it happens to be, right? But the very simple version of this is like a loop, an if statement, and like some type of operator where you're checking some condition, right? And you would be surprised how many people cannot answer this. There's no tricks at all. And they have stats on Wikipedia, and I think it's something ridiculous, like 70% of people can't answer it. It's such an effective way of just like, have you written code? Because there are no tricks. And I've interviewed people, like I said, in the past 12 years, where they'll say, this is how often I code or whatever is part of their job, how long they've been doing it. And they go, great, okay, we're going to do a question here. You can pick literally any programming language, even if it's pseudocode. And we're going to do like Fizz Buzz. And I explain the conditions. So again, numbers 1 through 10. If the number's even, print Fizz. If it's odd, print Buzz. They can't do it. It's very, very interesting that like that kind of thing happens. And I don't know, like, I've thought about this before. I don't think in those situations, I'm trying to think where it's like, what's that? Like, am I missing something truthfully? Like when someone says I've been doing it for this long, we're talking years of programming. And then they're unable to answer that in any programming language they want. So to me, it almost feels like they have to be not telling the truth, or they've been employed, but they're not, like, they're kind of coasting and not actually writing code. They don't know how to write code anymore or something. But I've wondered, like, what am I missing? Like, did I ask the question in a way that literally cannot be understood, or what? So I don't think that you need to ask, if you're going to ask like a skill question for coding, I genuinely don't think it has to be that difficult. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It's just my personal experience. And I think that you can extract a lot of value by kind of putting different constraints on the question and seeing how people navigate it. Again, you're not surprising people with these things and saying, aha, like, you never thought about this, fail. So you could be talking about a DSA question, and you'll say, well, does it change things if it's sorted? Or if it was sorted, does it change things if it's not sorted? Or if it was sorted in the reverse order, like, does that, like, what would change here? I've asked people like API questions, like, okay, if we expose this particular thing, like, what happens now? Like, any concerns, or like, does it make it easier to use? Like, can you tell me the pros and cons? Like, I want to see how people think through things. That's all. And when you're thinking through things and you're articulating your thoughts, to me, that's something we're going to be doing on the job. We're going to be working together, solving problems. I think, like, on the coding side, and I mean, even for behavioral stuff too, maybe not all behavioral, but at least for coding, I think a super effective way is like kind of doing like a pair programming exercise. I'm not saying it's easy to organize. I'm not saying there's no faults with it, but I really like that, because if you are a candidate and you get to sit down and work with someone to solve a problem in code, doesn't that kind of feel like what real life is like at work. Like, yeah, you're going to be doing stuff in isolation, like, independently. That's going to happen. But when it comes to working together on stuff, man, like, I don't know of a better way. You're literally practicing working together. Now, there are gotchas with that because, of course, like, okay, how do you make sure that the interviewer isn't leading too much, or how do you make sure the interviewer is not participating enough? Like, you're going to have variance in the interviewers. Some people will, if you're just looking at leading or not leading, some individuals will go hard one way or the other. So there's like some consistency challenges. Do you present a problem that both people don't know? So, okay, where does that question bank come from? Like, there's a lot to, I'm not trying to say it's trivial. I'm just saying that I think that's a really effective way that you can do it. I'm sitting in traffic, completely red, in the fast lane, paying money to be parked. Ask me how I feel about it. But behavioral interviews, similar thing, man. Like, it's not, let's take an example, right? If it's like, tell me about a time where you had a conflict with someone that you were like on a different team that you were working with. My goal with that question is not to say, I can't wait for you to embarrass yourself if you mess this question up. Like, it's not. This one can be a good one for revealing red flags. Like, if people start not taking any responsibility, or they're just blaming other people, or they're hyper focused on just like why someone was so awful, like, those can be warning signs that turn into red flags. But even so, if someone was spending a long time just talking about like, yeah, this person was just so difficult to work with, here's all the reasons I don't like them, like, that's not looking good. But if I were like, hey, like, tell me what you did, like, let's get back on track. If they could just flip it around and start answering and get back on track, like, that might not be a deal breaker. But if they're just like, they start to answer and then they go back to like blaming other people, and then I'm like, okay, like, we tried, like, that question's not looking so great for you. But again, the goal, I'm not setting out to like make people fumble. I literally get a lot of value in understanding how you navigate difficult conversations. Why? Because as a manager, guess what I have to deal with? I have to make sure that people are working well together. So, yeah, it happens. You might not believe it, but even with adults, right? It's like, it's not kids. Like, these are full-grown adults, software engineers, super smart people, excellent at what they do. And they can be great to work with too, but there are situations that come up and it's like, what do you do, right? And I want to make sure that people are mature and they can collaborate and they can ideally try to work out problems with each other, right? If they need to escalate, then they escalate. But like, I think that's a good type of question to ask. That's not trying to set someone up for failure. Anyway, going back to this whole thing, I think that if I kind of like summarize what was happening and like my perspective on it, one, I don't like to trick people in interviews. I think that's bullcrap. Two, I think it's really important to spend more time trying to get value out of someone and understand them versus looking to gatekeep them. But third, yes, I pay attention to warning signs and red flags. Yes, there are warning signs and red flags. And if people are like, if someone's racist in an interview, or they're insulting, they're condescending, some of this stuff is like, it's a red flag. It's not happening. There are some things that are a little bit more of like a warning sign. And there are going to be situations where, yeah, like, if I'm unsure, I will try to learn more about that and see if it becomes a red flag. But it's kind of like I've already been giving someone, this is usually how it works, I've been giving someone the chance to explain and navigate and go through things. And, if they're kind of painting the picture that like they happen to be problematic to work with, they don't take responsibility, I will try to understand that more. I'm not going to say, oh, let me just pretend you didn't say that. So, again, thinking about how this post was phrased, and what I believe the intent was, it's like it's not to ignore red flags. It's not the goal, but we're not going to like unfairly put people into positions, or if someone, like I said, if they're nervous, they're having difficulty answering a question legitimately, right? Like they're just, because they're nervous, they're blanking, they don't have a good example. If someone doesn't have a good example of something, that's another one to touch on. Like if I said, tell me about a time where you had a conflict with someone and how you resolved it, like on a different team or something. If they're like, look, like I'm a junior, I worked for 1 year, and like I don't really have a good example of a conflict with someone, I could either go look for another question, or I could say, tell me how you might approach that. Right? I'm not like, well, guess you're not getting the job, pal. Like that. I think that's kind of the meta point here, is like we're not trying to set people up to fail. So I wanted to talk through this because I thought it was kind of interesting, especially because two people I really like were debating about this, and I think personally it came down to a bit of the language use, likely unintentional, but I think that's why it happened. So hopefully that helps. But if you're curious, Ryan and I have a course on behavioral interviews. It's on Dome Train. We're very proud of it. We're doing our next course now, so we're super excited about that too. But yeah, it's interviewing's not easy. I mean, and when I say it's not easy, like I mean very much in particular for the candidates. I totally get it. It's nerve-wracking. It's uncomfortable. Like I don't enjoy any single part about it. I don't know anyone that does, but I'm sure there are people that enjoy it. There's people that enjoy anything. So as an interviewer, I'm not like super, it's not like something I get excited about, I would say. And I think the reason I probably don't is like I very easily get secondhand embarrassment, and I'm introverted. So what naturally happens, it's actually like exhausting for me is probably why. So to explain, if I'm interviewing someone and I start to feel like I know they're nervous, or they're messing things up, and they're like, oh, like I can tell they're like fumbling and trying to get some examples and stuff, immediately I feel that for them, and it's like very, very uncomfortable. So I don't mean that in that, like, I don't want to say like I'm embarrassed for them. That's not fair, but I feel their discomfort because I can sense it from them, right? I can tell they're uncomfortable, and then I start to feel that. And what I need to do, and it actually happens pretty naturally for me, which is good, I guess. And I've noticed this because I am introverted, but let me explain. So when people start to, to fumble and whatever else, like I compensate for it naturally. And I think it's because like I feel what they're feeling, where I'm like, I know this is uncomfortable for you. Like, I get it. So like, what can I, like, I'm thinking this in my head, like, what are all the things I can do to make this person more comfortable? So whether it's cracking a joke, or whether it's like, hey, let's pivot to this, or, it's just, but doing that is not, it's not that it's difficult in the moment, but it takes a lot of energy out of me. And I think that that's something I anticipate when I go into interviews, is that for most people, they're uncomfortable. For most people, they're probably going to mess up some words or something. Like the whole thing is like, I get it, right? It's uncomfortable. And that means that I'm anticipating that I'm going to have at least some portion of time where I have like these high energy things where I'm like, oh man, I have to like, I kind of have to like compensate for this person, for how their communication is, and making sure that they're feeling comfortable and all this stuff. So I think it's probably why I don't like love it. But what is cool is like I get to like meet awesome people. At the end of the day, like if I'm not the hiring manager, I'm just one of the people in the interview loop. I can I get to kind of put my vote in. But it's nice to be able to meet people. So that's cool. It's nice to be able to answer questions for them. So when they're like, hey, like really curious about how the team works and all this stuff, like I like that part. But I think it's primarily like this feeling of like, if they're feeling like they're off, like I sense it and I'm like, oh man, like, yeah, I just kind of like mirror that feeling and it doesn't feel good. So, but that's interviews. We're almost home here. So what else is going on? I got a super busy day tomorrow. It's a one-on-one day. My Mondays and Thursdays are packed with one-on-ones. So I do that on purpose, by the way, so I'm not complaining about it. It's just, it frees up other time in the week. So got to do that. I talked earlier about like I got to get connects done. I got to start responding to those, which I'm wincing about, not because I don't like doing them. I'm wincing because I know how much work it is. It's very time consuming. So I don't know if I talked about this on this vlog, but I definitely think on my weekly check-in vlog that I do on my other channel. At Microsoft, we have what are called connects. I kind of described this earlier in the video. We also have like a talent guide, and it's basically just a rubric. And generally what I find is on connects, people talk about their accomplishments and things like that. So project deliveries, and it's more quantitative, and that's great. It's all good stuff. And then we have these talent guides, which are far less like quantitative types of things and much more like qualitative. And they'll talk about like, I don't know, like traits that we expect that developers have at different levels, as an example. So like, I'm just trying to like use my memory to visualize some of the things on there. But there's like a customer focus section that talks about like, you have pride in your work and stuff like that, or your ability to like, like work with partners or clients and kind of like with empathy, like that kind of thing. And then there's stuff that's like under the technical sections on, you're able to solve problems independently, or like just things like this, right? And what I find fascinating is that at Microsoft, connects are mandatory twice a year, but what's not mandatory is using this talent guide. It's just not mandatory. So managers do not have to have conversations with their employees and use the talent guide. And to me, that feels kind of backwards, because like the Connect, I think, has value in it, but the talent guide is literally, when I have to put people up for promotion and rewards, I am expected to be able to speak to different things on that talent guide in particular. Like, I'm expected to do that. So I find it very odd that like that's not sort of like enforced the same way that connects are. So for me, I started doing this, maybe not in my first, I think I didn't do this my first year at Microsoft, but every year since then. And I've had really good feedback on this from people I manage. But I go through the talent guide, and I go through the Connect. And I put them together so that when I'm having conversations with people, it's like they understand how their Connect is correlated to how I see career progression. So, for example, when someone talks about a project with the milestone that they delivered and they worked hard on it, here are the results, and it's like these are successes, I can respond and go, yeah, and here's the things that relates to on the talent guide. Like, here's extra reasons why specifically this is valuable and how it relates to career progression and things like that. So I think people really value that. The other thing that is on top of that is like those talent guides, the rubric that I'm talking about, that's not something I just do on my own. So I actually, some of the higher level engineers are like, it's kind of just like paperwork. I don't like doing it. So I try to be flexible on this stuff, but especially for the people that are interested, I go through the talent guide with them. I give them the opportunity for them to do like a self-analysis, and then I kind of include my own notes. And then we have this living document where we can go back and review it as people want to talk about career things. So like that takes time too. But yeah, the connects for me, oh my god, too much talking. The connects for me take a long time because I'm basically doing a talent guide, full update, and a connect response. And then I have to have the conversation with people, which is like another hour. So it's just, like I said, I'm not complaining about it. It's a lot of work. And I think that, like, I 100% think it's worth it because not only do I think that there's a benefit in it personally, like I want to believe there's a benefit, but I've literally had feedback where people are like, this made it so much more understandable. I just went through a talent guide review with someone, not even with their Connect yet, and just this initial talent guide review, and they said, hey, I've talked about this with my manager before, like these concepts and stuff, but like we've never gone through it kind of line by line like this and like really tried to understand it. So they were like, this is really good for me. So like these are the things like I need to spend time on. I think it makes a huge difference. Can I get this? Oh. I was trying to let this person, but they waved me, so no worries. You'll be trapped. Maybe they're turning left. You can see them. There they are. That's them right there. So yeah, it's gonna be busy, and then I go to Hawaii. Can't wait to go to Hawaii. I got a meeting in like 6 minutes. I'm so close to home. But am I going to be late for the meeting? There's only one way to know. Let's just sit at this stupid light a little bit longer. This light is awful by our house. Makes no sense why it's red for this long. But yeah, I got a meeting, and then I'm done for the day. I'm gonna try to make sure that I'm only on for the allotted time. It says it's a 30-minute meeting. I don't want to go over. I gotta record course material tonight, so I will probably do the meeting, eat something because I'm starving, and then get the camera on and start recording. See how many sections I can do tonight. I'm excited though. Due date's coming up soon, but I think this will be another good course. It's going to be another big one. It's quite exhausting doing the big ones. It's a lot of material to get through, so, but it's good. These are the kinds of courses I like making, so. It's like these car rides without all the rambling. It's a little bit more succinct. But here we go. But all the dogs are waiting in the window. We have this, yeah, they are. We have this big bay window, and the dogs just wait there. I don't think they wait for me, because I don't think they even love me anymore. Even my own two dogs, I don't think they care. They love my wife though. So, like, even my youngest dog, he's barking at me right now. He, I think if I died, he like wouldn't care because he loves my wife so much, it's crazy. He's obsessed with her. So sometimes if we're sitting on the couch together, he'll make it seem like he's coming up to see me. Like, oh, okay, you want to give me attention? And then he climbs onto my lap basically just so he can walk over to my wife. And I'm like, man, you're such a traitor, but they're super cute. We love them. Can you see them in the Yeah, you can. That's Lila. She started barking when we moved into this house. Otherwise, she was pretty quiet. But now she's the ringleader in barking. But that's that, folks. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.